What's up, guys? Good morning. Good morning and happy Tuesday to all the loyal viewers of King Pilled, and in particular the Astrolabe. You are watching the Astrolabe, brought to you by King Pilled. I am the face of King Pilled. My name is Matt. If you're watching for the first time, welcome. Please do hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and let's see if we can push this out in front of some new people today. If you're watching on Twitter, welcome to you also. Please hit the retweet and signal boost this stream from when I talked to Disgrace Propagandist. I think it was him. When I talked to him last week, he said that it looks like that I look like I'm inside like a womb, like an artificial womb. I'm in the birthing chamber, I suppose. That's kind of a little creepy to think about. So getting started a little bit late today. Sorry for that. I had a hard time coming up with stuff to talk about today. There's plenty of content, but there isn't a lot out there that is either constructive. Like what? Why do you need to know about this? You know, why do you need to know about this new horrifying crime, or this new stupid thing that some dumb person said, or this new squabble that's happening between two sets of gay organizations? Like, I'm not bringing anything to the table by talking about all that stuff, and so I want to find the stuff that's a little more off the beaten path. People aren't talking about as much, or at least if I feel like they aren't talking about it in a way that merits talking about. But I had a hard time finding that stuff today. I was just, I don't know. I was sitting there scrolling through Twitter, listening to a couple different podcasts, and trying to find something that was unique, that really grabbed my interest. And I was just like, man, there's nothing to talk about. I don't really have anything. I went back, dug through all my old bookmarks. I was like, yeah, there's a couple interesting things. And then when I finally sat down and started opening up all the different tabs and getting all the articles and everything ready, I was like, you know, actually there's some interesting stuff. I don't necessarily know if I can draw a common thread among all of them, which is an instinct I have. I want to figure out like what's the thing that unites all of these, what's the takeaway, distill it down into something. I don't think I necessarily have that today, but I got some interesting stuff to talk about. Now, of course, before we get into the serious topics, we have to take time for the things that are just simply edifying, whether it's just entertainment, just something for the lulz, or in the case of what I've got here today, this isn't going to be a pump you up thing. This is going to be more of like a make you kind of sit back and relax and just experience some positive emotion for a few minutes. So let's share this first clip. Oh, great. Now I got to figure out which tab it's on, because I split things up into different tabs today. Okay, here we go.
Wise men say only fools rush in, for I can't help falling in love with you. Shall I stay? What it be I'll say, for I can't help falling in love with you.
All right, there's your morning dose of the feels, as the kids say. What's up, Taylor Brown? He says, it's a great day to have a great day, and it is indeed. This was the caption on that one, was a sweet father singing an Elvis Presley song as a lullaby to his baby. There was another clip that I had that I was going to line up, but it just didn't. I I had to whittle some stuff down. After all, it was Professor Scott Galloway talking about the problem of young men not having direction and purpose, not having a basically people who are advocating for them. And he started getting a little emotional toward the end, and he said it's the greatest expression of masculinity is to take care of a child that isn't yours. And that really resonated. Now, of course, in this case here is the father with presumably his actual daughter, but it ties into this, a father being a father and investing emotionally and creatively and what's the word I'm looking for here? Like, there's the word patronizing, which has a negative connotation, but like directing all of your attention and care in a really vivid emotional way toward children. Like this is like the distillation of masculinity, which makes the inversion of that, the corruption of that, the perversion of that so evil. That it is so evil for a man to prey on a child, whether literally, sexually, or generationally, like burning up the inheritance of the child, burning up their social inheritance, leaving them a worse world than you received. That's why that is such a great evil. It's the greatest evil. This is the ultimate inversion of masculinity, is leaving the world worse off than you found it, at least to whatever extent you could affect it within your domain. And I think the fact that is, I've had a lot of people who told me that the big change they experienced throughout COVID and the greater events of 2020, and you could really extend it back to 2015, 2014, a lot of this stuff was beginning to well up. But one of the biggest things that the thing they told me that was one of the biggest things that really got their attention was they came to grips with the reality that there is evil, that evil is a very real thing. And when you're confronted with that, you can either just decide to give over to the evil, to just invest in it and treat it as if it is the only real thing, or you have a natural instinct in you that says, if evil is real, then good must be as well. So for a lot of people wind up finding the good through encounter with the evil. They see the evil, they see the dark, and that's what turns their eyes and turns their mind toward the good. And I think that that is repentance. That is an act of repentance. This is what repentance is confronting the evil and turning back to the good. Confronting the evil, turning back to the good. Confronting the evil and turning back to the good. And then there's no scorecard here. It's not like the more times you do it, the better you are. You could confront the evil and turn to the good 100 times. And that wouldn't make it any less evil when the 101st time you confront the evil and you embrace it. It's like you're right back to the starting point again. What matters is this act, cultivating this act over and over and over again. There's all these different aphorisms and stuff about, it's not falling down that matters. It doesn't matter if you fall down 7 times as long as you get up 7 times, et cetera, et cetera. Those are driving at this truth. The righteous man is not the man who never falls, who never stumbles, who never encounters evil, who manages to purge all evil from his presence. It's the man who, when confronted with evil, always turns back to the good. And so then because the posture to invest yourself wholly in trying to purge the evil, that in itself breeds evil. The human attention is incredibly powerful. We literally manifest things into reality through our attention, through our consciousness. What we focus that consciousness on, we have control over it. It's not something that is produced from us. It's something that we are accessing, we're experiencing. It's a sense that we have, and it's a sense that we in turn can use. And we do use it no matter what. You can't not use this sense. It's not like you can just turn it off. I mean, you can turn it off in a sense, but by all indications, trying to turn it off doesn't actually turn it off. You just begin experiencing it in a different way. Spiritual death does not coincide with physical death. So, if given that this is the case, it becomes all the more important that we guard our attention, we guard our consciousness. And there's a paradox in this. You have to guard your attention, you have to guard your consciousness and avoid investing it, avoid directing your attention at that which is evil. But what this means is that you can't dedicate yourself to trying to, you can't dedicate yourself on the evil and try to stamp it out. You have to be coexistent with it in a sense. You have to recognize that it's there. You have to see it. You have to be aware of it. But you have to turn to the good. You have to use that as the catalyst to turn you to the good and focus on the good, the true, the beautiful, which are not abstract, vague concepts. These are actually embodied in a person. And you can know this person. You can see him. You can interact with him, whether spiritually or physically. And he's left a body for you to interact with. There's a pattern, there's a tradition around interacting with his body and knowing that it is his body that you're interacting with. And in doing that, you will purge the evil. But you can't purge the evil by attacking it directly. Because that is a way of giving into it. This is part of the way that evil gets you, is it induces you to come after it. It induces you to pursue it. And you say, no, I'm pursuing it for the right reasons. But we're masters of deceiving ourselves. So I think it's something that's become really, really clear to me that we need to continually focus our minds on the good in every possible way we can, even no matter how wholesome or no matter how no matter how wholesome it is, no matter how I don't know, even if it's cheesy. There's something that's absolutely good in a pragmatic way about focusing your mind on cheesy, wholesome things. I personally don't think this is cheesy, but even things that are. There's clips that I'm like, I really like that. I enjoy watching that. That made me feel good. And I think about throwing it in the ASTROLABE folder, and then I'm like, yeah, it's too cheesy. See, even I I'm like, it's hard to live up to the words that I'm saying. It would be, for a lot of people out there, it would probably be better if they spent their entire, they have their whatever they're listening to while they're working or watching on their other screen. It would be better if that was all just entirely shallow, like cheesy interactions between a wholesome family, or some like stream of people doing just random everyday activities with a cheerful, upbeat attitude. It would be better to watch that sort of thing, the stuff that's cultivated to get at that sentimental, cheesy spirit in you. It would be better to spend all your time populating your brain with that than whatever arcane philosophy or political commentary or what have you. Now, I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I mean, I literally do this for a living. I sit here and I provide commentary on arcane political topics. But I don't think that removes this truth that there's probably a lot of people who shouldn't be listening to me if I'm talking about those things. They would be better off taking their mind and focusing on these more positive, mundane things that bring their focus closer to home. Our focus has gotten, we've been able to project our consciousness out and interact far out beyond our immediate area that we're able to hold influence over. And in a lot of ways, that's the reason why the local things have started falling apart. Because people are spending all of their time and effort and energy focused on all these sexier, international, global type subjects. That's part of the reason why I think it's so good to have. I think sports ball is such a good thing. I think sports ball is a way of, when done properly, it's a way of bringing your attention back to your local community. It's not, we will never be able to live completely cordoned off in these little silos ever again. Even, I know there's people that think, oh, we're going to return to that or whatever. No, we're not going to. we're not going to swing completely away from like all of the technologies that have developed over the last 3, 4, 500 years. Those are going to stay around. They're just going to be used differently. And so there's always going to be the outside trying to come in, and that's fine. That's fine. We need to have some of the outside come in. We can't be entirely insular. A human being can't be insular. It has to interact with its external environment, especially if it's a guy. A man craves the outside. So that has to be satisfied, but it has to be maintained within the balance of protecting and cultivating the inside as well. This is why it's so important for men to get married. To get married to a woman. It does, like, it matters who she is, but it also doesn't. Like, get married to a woman and be faithful to her. Dedicate your attention and your focus on providing for her. This is just a fact, like a biological fact of life, because that's one of the best ways of cultivating the balance between the outside and the inside. Part of the reason why we have a masculinity crisis, and we have the incels, and we have the angry young men, and we have the disenchanted, vengeful son spirit. Part of this is because we haven't had that balance, and we've all participated in this. Many of us didn't know any better. We're just dealing with the world as it was given us, but the same with our parents. Our parents were just dealing with the world as it was given to them. The same with their parents, and their parents, and their parents, and their parents. So why humility is so important. Like, you just assume everyone else is you have the whole victimology thing. You have the whole victimhood phenomenon, which is another one of these things that's taking a really important fundamental truth and then distorting it and perverting it. So when you say treat everyone else as if they're a victim of their own circumstances, this doesn't mean disempower them and say, okay, everyone else just needs to stand in for them and become their crutch. They need to go through life with crutches. No, it's recognizing that they're both at fault for where they are and not at fault for where they are. These are both true simultaneously, and they have to both be treated as true simultaneously. It can't be all one and it can't be all the other. It's not your fault that you are where you are, but it's your responsibility to get yourself out of it. And it's the rest of society's responsibility, collectively at whatever level of scale, to facilitate you taking responsibility for your own domain. Sometimes that's going to be tough love. Sometimes it's not. I don't know what got me off onto all of this, but I watched a video of a father playing the guitar and singing Elvis Presley to his newborn baby girl, and it sparked all of these thoughts. I suppose that's what happened. What's up, Cooper? Someone said sexy, and Cooper showed up. Mr. Westford says, is King Pill your full-time job? I do it essentially full-time, but I also have other stuff that I'm involved in as well, working with a couple of local startups and doing some real estate, and there's a few other things going on. But more recently, especially, I've been dedicating a lot more time to the channel and building some more direction for it. So if you'd like to support it, basically all of these streams get demonetized almost immediately for copyright claims or talking about spicy stuff or whatever. So if you would like to contribute to this so I can keep doing it on a basically full-time basis, then you can send a super chat. You can become a channel member, $5. You could become one of the King Pilled. And then the best way that you can support the channel here is to join the King Pilled Discord. And that's the one that gets you the most perks in return for doing so. So if you go to kingpilled.com, you can sign up. You can join the King Pilled Discord. This Friday, we're going to be doing another schizo stream, taking suggestions for what that stream should be. Oh, and that also reminds me, I tweeted something yesterday. Maybe I should pin it. Oops, stop singing. Doing a call for your favorite schizo stream. I'm going to come back and find it and retweet it here. So this schizo theories. So hit me with your favorite schizo theories. I'm talking Tartaria, Atlantis, cryptids, Hollow Earth, ancient aliens, remote viewing, expanding Earth, UAPs, breakaway civilizations, secret technologies, consciousness, time travel, world fairs, mud floods, flat Earth, etc., etc., etc. Give me your favorite schizo theory. Whether you believe it or you just like thinking about it or you just heard about it and thought it was interesting, do me a favor and send it to me. Just reply to this tweet here, and I'm going to pin this to the profile for now. and just give me like a supporting link, like a video or a blog or a book or something along those lines, a TV series, a movie, whatever that supports that. And then I'll take the best ones and I'll dig into them on the show here. I've got a list of them myself that I'm trying to research into in the background, but any new ones are very much appreciated. So yeah, we'll be doing a schizo stream where we just pick some of these fun things and watch them and discuss them in a voice chat in the Discord on Friday. It'll be probably around 8 or 9 p.m. Friday, I'm guessing. Still kind of nailing in exactly when it works best for everyone. We've got a bunch of people to cater to. So Duffhead was there last time. He says he drank too much whiskey watching it last week. So there you go. You could come to the King Pill Discord and you could drink too much whiskey watching schizo streams. I was up until like 3 a.m. talking to people afterwards. What's up, 2-Bit Podcast? John MC is here. What's up? And John Lloyd as well. The Johns are here. Taylor Brown says, I sang the Johnny Cash version of You Are My Sunshine to my daughter when she was born. One of the best moments of my life. See, this is the type of wholesome stuff I'm talking about. This is the stuff that matters. All that other stuff, it matters too. But this stuff matters. We can't lose sight of this. We need to promote this and talk about it more. John MC says, greetings on the third day of the Holy Trinity. Greetings to you, sir. All right. So let's dive into some of the fun we've got here. So first of all, there's a story that it seems like kind of a big deal, but it's sort of interesting to me that I don't see a lot of people talking about it. Have you guys seen all of this about these massive floods going on in the Midwest, in Minnesota, Iowa, South Dakota? What's causing the devastating flooding around the Midwest? Hundreds of Iowa residents have needed rescue from record-setting flooding that has swamped parts of the state, covering buildings up to their rooftops, shutting down major roads, and disrupting basic services like electricity and drinking water. Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds said water in some areas rose above records from 1993, a flood many in the Midwest remember as the worst of their lives. Floodwaters were so powerful, they pulled down a train bridge connecting North Sioux City, South Dakota with Sioux City, Iowa. The water is expected to be at its highest early this week. In some places, it has already passed, and then the crest of the river will move south, eventually into the Missouri and Mississippi rivers. Businesses are shuttered. Main cities have been impacted. Hospitals, nursing homes, and other care facilities were evacuated, Reynolds said at a news conference over the weekend, calling the expected damage staggering. It's hot, too, making dangerous conditions worse. So what's causing all of this? Torrential rains. In a 3-day stretch, Sioux Falls, South Dakota received about 7 inches of rain. In Canton, South Dakota, roughly 30 miles to the southeast, 18 inches of rain fell. In Iowa, some areas since Friday got as much as 15 inches of rain. It's just been round after round through the month, and then recently we've had a few big rounds. Hot air in the Northeast has directed the path of storms through the Midwest, according to Shel Winkley, a weather and climate expert with Climate Central, a nonprofit focused on climate science. With that big high-pressure system over the east, that kind of helps steer these and slow these systems down specifically to where we've seen the flooding over the past few days. And the most recent rounds of heavy rain have fallen on wet ground. When the soil is wet, it can't absorb as much new moisture, so more of the rain runs into rivers and streams. So the crest is the highest level a river reaches before receding, and they're tracked closely by forecasters. It's essential to know when a crest is expected to hit, how bad it will be, and how fast it's traveling down the river. So if you imagine the river is flowing along, but it's not always at an even depth. Something happens upstream, and then it's going to give a big inflow of water, and that's going to flow down. And so this surge is going to come, and it's going to hit the crest, and you want to know when that's going to be, and if it's going to pass it or not. Because if it's going to pass it, then it's time to get prepared. Sioux City Fire Marshal Mark Esoff told reporters that the Big Sioux River stabilized Monday morning at around 45 feet, over 7 feet higher than the previous record. It's just been difficult to predict what's going to happen when levels are this high when we have no history with it. The flooding is more spread out than expected, which is helping lessen flooding in some inhabited areas. It will bump up Missouri River levels, but not as much as anticipated. The rainfall across northern Iowa will take several days to make it through the state. Since all that water eventually drains into the Missouri and Mississippi rivers, flooding is expected in those big rivers as well. So as all of this water is making its way south, everything is going to be rising. So who knows to what extent? I mean, the Mississippi River is pretty fucking gigantic, but 18, 19 inches of rain falling in an area in the space of like a day that is a lot of water. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes downstream. Now, of course, got to have our obligatory mention here of climate change. Is this related to climate change? In the Midwest, flooding isn't new, nor is heavy rain in June. And linking any big particular rainstorm to climate change is difficult. Okay, well that seems like a good statement to leave it on. But no. But as greenhouse gases warm the planet, the hotter atmosphere can hold more water. That means big rainstorms can pour down even more water, overwhelming sewer systems and flooding downtowns. Plus, bad floods are growing more common, he said. The extremes are becoming more extreme. Well, to me, this sounds like a good reason for beefing up your infrastructure. Investing in better sewer systems. If we know everything's going to get hotter, then we should be preparing for that. If everything's going to get hotter, and that means that there's going to be these downstream effects like extreme storms or massive flooding and all these sorts of things, well, we should be investing in the infrastructure, targeting the areas where that needs to be addressed and taking care of it. So, the atmosphere gets hotter and it's going to hold more water. It's going to rain more. All right, well, let's beef up our infrastructure because there's obviously lots of benefits. More rain? Well, more rain would sure be nice in some areas. Is there a way we can capture this and redirect it to those areas? Now, of course, I just read Cooper's comment. Matt, can you explain the Trinity to me in the same way Neil deGrasse Tyson talks to everyone like a retard? I will need to practice my talking like a retard before I can do that. It's 3 and 1. It's 3 and 1. I don't know. I'll have to work on it. John MC says there have been videos of major floods this year from all over the globe. China, Central Europe, Arabia, Dubai, India. Well, you know what's interesting, John? So it's interesting you mentioned that. So the big flood in Dubai, they happened to admit readily that this was a product of cloud seeding. I saw a headline about how cloud seeding, the aluminum that they've been putting in the clouds, has jacked up the aluminum levels in local frogs or something like that. So now it's funny how we went from chemtrails is the ultimate. Flat Earth kind of replaced it, but for a long time, chemtrails was like the ultimate meme to identify the crazy person who is completely detached from reality, and it's never been addressed. We never had an official narrative shift. It's just now like, oh yeah, we're cloud seeding. Yeah, there's these planes are spraying stuff into the atmosphere, and it changes it changes the chemical structure of things and causes precipitation, and we can target this in the specific areas we want. No, just kind of admitted it. Bill Gates has his whole thing about how he's going to go put dust in the atmosphere to block the sun to decrease global warming. All this stuff just gets sort of just acknowledged without ever any. Oh, okay. So chemtrails are legit. But then there's a lot of people who don't get this update to the operating system. So they're still operating in the old world where they're like, someone talks about chemtrails and everyone's like, ah, ha, 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 ha. And it's like, dude, they're literally describing this as a feature. They're readily admitting it. All the crazy people were right, it turns out. And furthermore, if you talk to any honest geologist or climate scientist, they'll tell you that historically, number one, that the climate has changed dramatically throughout Earth's history. There's been massive changes that absolutely dwarf even the most ambitious projections of the next 50 to 100 years. There's been changes of they're talking about if you get, I don't know, 1.5 degree global temperature rise over the next 50 years, then it's going to end civilization as we know it. And yet there's been instances in the past where there's been 18 degree temperature changes over the course of 3 years. The Earth, this is long before humans were around in any sort of major industrial capacity. So obviously there's these massive changes and spikes and drops and stuff that happen associated with various cataclysms or who knows what's causing all of them. But what they will tell you universally is that the cold periods are associated with less life. They're harsher. They're associated with disease, political strife, and conflict. The warm periods are the opposite. They're associated with growth and prosperity and peace and expansion. So they're wanting to sell you these two narratives at the same time, where one is everything is getting hotter and that means everyone's going to die, and also we're more and more divided and we're moving into an area of greater and greater political conflict. These things don't go together. These narratives don't correspond. If everything is getting warmer, then by all indications, we're going to be moving into an area of growth and peace and prosperity. If everything is going to get colder, then we're probably going to move into an era of disease and fighting over resources becoming more and more scarce. If everything's getting hotter, we're getting more water on the earth, then this just means we're increasing the arable land. We're increasing the potential for growth and increased prosperity. Now, what's funny is, so you've got this story. Let me, there's a couple of videos here I wanted to show you guys just so you can visualize what's happening. Oh, and then I forgot I had another couple other little clips before we got into the big water stuff. Where did I put this? Okay, here we go. So here's this dam, the Rapidan Dam in Minnesota, that is beginning to fail or has failed. It apparently is needed to be, I got to figure out which tab this is. It's needed to be updated for a long time. It was built a little over 100 years ago. The dam is over 100 years old, as are many others around the nation. Do y'all think these types of infrastructure failures will soon become the new normal in America? Well, I think they already have become the new normal, but I don't think that's going to persist. On Monday, officials in southern Minnesota announced the Rapidan Dam had been breached and is in imminent failure condition. So here's a video of this dam to give you an idea of the extent of the flooding and the downstream consequences. So you can see the dam, the river flowed right through here. This was like a beach. You can see the walkway comes down around the side over here. There was like a parking lot up here. So this was the dam. But you could see all of these logs and sticks and everything that are blocking the dam. And this has caused a backlog. And so then with rising water levels, water does what it does. It found a workaround. As Bruce Lee says, you must be like water. If you've got something blocking you, find the workaround. So water found the workaround. This house is screwed. There may have even been other houses in here. Who knows? It's like a whole nother river now has extended out here beyond what the original river was. And this is not like this. You're not going to rebuild this. Like once the water is receded again, like this is just going to be a new part of the floodplain. It's going to be much harder, much more expensive to build there.
Someone in the water over there?
So there's one video. I think he pulled out, maybe he did. I thought he pulled out for more perspective. But so here's one example. And then here is another one. This is in Sioux Falls. That volume is loud. Hold on. Too many things happening here. Yeah, as 2-Bit says, this is the competence crisis. Explained. This is in Sioux Falls. I'm going to find you a picture in a minute of what this looked like before. It'll blow your mind. If you don't know what this part of Sioux Falls normally looks like, this is insane. This is a preposterous amount of water. And this is like right next to big urban area.
Let's go to the waterfall.
So there was a picture down here. Here you go. Here's August of last year. That same place. This is all underwater now. This is all completely underwater. It's not just under a little bit of water. It's under like a massive river. So now is this? I'm not sure which Sioux Falls this is. I think it's South Dakota. This guy's posting from South Dakota. Maybe someone who's from the area. Like I'm familiar with. I've seen this before, but I don't know where it is. Last Monday night. So even there, you could see how much has come down just since then. Okay, so then what's funny is at the same time that this is happening, you've got this story. So this is a tweet from Wall Street Apes from 4 days ago. It says, I hope this makes the Idaho water shutoff to farmers real for people. Have you heard anybody talking about the Idaho water shutoff for farmers? Idaho is fining farmers $300 per acre for using water. Farmers are already declaring bankruptcy. Here are 2 farmers from eastern Idaho who have just received their water shutoff orders. We just got our curtailment letter from the Idaho Department of Water Resources, and they're telling us we have to shut our 8 wells off. Shut our water off? They want us to shut our water off. They want us to turn our wells off. The reservoirs are full, yet we're being told we cannot water 500,000 acres of crops. If you decide that you're just going to keep watering, they're going to fine you $300 per acre. Well, if you're just growing a crop like hay, that doesn't make $300 an acre. You're just going to lose money on that. You look at on the curtailment paper, it's not just farmers, it's commercial businesses. They want to shut off just in Bingham County. So Bingham County grows more potatoes than any other county in the state. And just in Bingham County, there's $1.3-ish billion spent. If that water was curtailed, it would reduce the amount of money spent in the county by $300 to $400 million. So you wouldn't just be putting farmers out of business. You'd be putting people who deliver gas out of business, people who sell groceries, all the equipment people, the repairmen, the servicemen. Guys just came out working on their pivots and stuff. You'd be putting them out of business. Trucking companies will go out of business. You have a lot of guys who have storages for potatoes. All those guys, they would no longer be getting rent for their potatoes. It would just devastate the entire Idaho economy. There's already local farmers who've shut their wells off and their fields have already dried up because of this curtailment order, and they're going to be out millions of dollars. They're going to end up declaring bankruptcy, and if the farmers declare bankruptcy, the banks that finance the farmers are going to declare bankruptcy, and then the whole economy is just shot. It's going to destroy the Idaho economy. So there's a 12-minute video here if you want to. These were excerpts from the video, but if you want to listen to what they're talking about from themselves, then I'll drop the link in the chat. And I will retweet it as well so you can find it on my Twitter timeline. So Witwit, I don't know how that's supposed to be pronounced. He says, I'm in the epicenter of the Northwest Iowa floods. Any questions? Yeah, how are you doing, man? Like, how are things going? How long is this expected to put you guys out? Are you, have you, like, what's your status? Fill us in. Mr. Westford said this sounds like stuff that happened in the Soviet Union. Yes. Vorpal Anvil says, I've heard a rumor that the water is being diverted to BlackRock-style mining operations. I wouldn't be surprised. What's interesting here is, so yeah, this is exactly like the Soviet, a lot of the things the Soviets were doing to the kulaks. And obviously, Idaho being generally a red state, it's got a thorn in the side of the regime. There's definitely a political cause for this. Now, what's funny is that if this truly does have the ripple effect through the entire Idaho economy that it sounds like it will, which I do think that they're correct in that, which will have a downstream effect on the rest of the national economy, then like there's a thing that's happening in a lot of these states like Texas and Idaho where you have all the California refugees fleeing out to these cities. Everyone's been complaining about how Boise is being turned into basically a blue city. And I mean, most cities are blue, but Boise has been bluing. Those people are going to get hit by this exact same thing. They're going to suffer on it just as much. So these are people that, for whatever reason, they already had an inclination. They're leaving California because of stuff going on in California. Oh, we're going to go to this place with all this agriculture and it's in the country, and nice and stable, and then they're going to experience the exact same thing. This is not making the regime more popular. This is the like openly stepping on your dick part of the program. It's only going to get they're only undermining themselves with this sort of thing, whether they're actually behind it or not, because this is part of the consequence crisis. Part of the consequence crisis is a complete loss in the existing authority structures, a complete loss of confidence in the existing authority structures. And if you truly do recognize and see this sort of thing as an existential threat, not just to like maintaining a civil society, but like avoiding falling into Mad Max world, then literally any presidential administration that has even the vaguest chance of wiping out this sort of regulation and actually promoting agriculture, promoting domestic trade and domestic manufacturing and reshoring all of the things that we need to sustain ourselves, economic autarky. Any administration that's even vaguely in that direction, it's like an existential need to install them. And is that a deal with the devil? Yeah, of course. But there is no alternative option. The alternative option is reinstall the people who are openly doing this right now. This is I'm trying to keep I don't want to go deeper down into this because it's going to turn into a bunch of unproductive conversation. But yeah, Euthanasia says, how about that Blood Satellite interview last night? Go to Blood Satellite. It's on YouTube. I don't know if he's going to put it on his podcatcher or not. But last night, Dimes had a very interesting conversation with the guy Stormy Waters that I played the clip from the Consciousness Revolution on Jungle Bunker Telemetric Funk. I played that yesterday. You got a little bit of Stormy Waters from there. He has a conversation with Dimes last night that was absolutely phenomenal. He talked about he was touching on a lot of the same stuff that we've talked about with the PayPal Mafia and then with Tom Luongo and Phil Gibson's thesis about the Fed and American commercial and investment banks who are making moves to essentially bankrupt Europe and actually advance American sovereignty over its own interests. The reshoring of the dollar and the cutting off the euro dollar phenomenon. He talked at length about all of that. There is just because the stuff that just because you're not seeing this stuff in the news doesn't mean that it's not happening. There's many of these things that our guys ostensibly want that are happening. Yes, you're going to get other stuff with it that you don't like. That's how politics works in a democratic system, which is what we have. That's the system that we have right now. So the question in front of you should be, do I want something that's better than right now? Or do I want what's perfect and not attainable right now? Am I going to step over a dollar to pick up a penny? Am I going to cut off my nose to spite my face? Pick your aphorism. There are many things that you want, many things that would be very, very good for us that actually have a chance coming down the pipeline because there are very powerful interests that want many of those same things. They want them for their own reasons, but they're better than continuing as we have been because it's very clear what trajectory we're on if things continue as they are. Any deviation from that is welcome. Euthanasia said, I'd rather suffer for a bit now and let the euro-dollar explode. Yes. Okay, so Wit WT here. He says, holy crap, they got 20 inches of rain in a week. We got like 3 inches of rain in a week last week or the week before, and that was a crazy amount of rain. It was like, it's Texas, so it all disappeared really quickly. But that was a lot of rain. 20 inches of rain in a week, I can't even fathom. He says, Spencer, Iowa is underwater. Friends and families there. And the Okoboji Lakes area is the wealthiest area in the entire state, and the lakes haven't crested yet. It's hard to not get schizo about this. We're the most red area Steve King country, and we never closed anything during COVID. This whole area is is an enemy of the regime by a lot. Yes. The point I was making is it's very this sort of thing becomes really evident, I think, when you compare these two stories next to each other. The Idaho, where we're fining you for not using water because whatever, there's not enough water or whatever. And yet, like 2 states over, you have more water than anybody knows what to deal with. And all of that water could be redirected somewhere. See, one of the examples I thought of is this bridge. You've got this dam, rather. You got this dam that breaks. And part of the reason that it breaks is because unprecedented flooding happened along with they weren't doing the necessary maintenance on the dam, and it got all these sticks and stuff piled up blocking it. What if there were some guys who were in that city who were like, hey, our city's not being properly taken care of, and if somebody targets us with malicious cloud seeding or weaponizing the radar or like weaponizing energy pulses to steer and redirect weather patterns, which is very clearly happening. If someone does that, we're going to be hosed, and everyone downstream of us is going to be hosed. So maybe we should work on taking whatever slings and arrows we need so we could build up our infrastructure to maintain, to deal with something like that. Wouldn't that be a good use of time? Wouldn't that be a good thing to direct your time and your effort and energy to, rather than like yelling about whatever foibles the GOP has right now? Think of what could have been avoided if a bunch of young men who are very disenchanted with the system decided to take all of that anger and direct it righteously toward actually maintaining their own infrastructure. If the government's not going to do it, we are. There's plenty of people out there who would fund something like that. There's just nobody to fund because nobody's doing these kinds of things. Everyone wants to complain about how bad the existing people are. But there's a point at which it becomes evil to just continue sitting around complaining, when you could be investing that time and energy toward actually solving these problems. And it turns out these are the only way these problems are going to get solved. It's not like you can just trust the plan and expect, the next administration's going to come in and it's just going to wave a magic wand and fix all of this. No. But the next administration coming in might be sympathetic to carving out a space for people who are trying to solve these problems. The people who are affiliated with it are talking about the infrastructure problems. They actually believe in America existing as an entity and people in America being healthy and prosperous. Because when people in America are healthy and prosperous, they get rich. If there are people out there who want to profit off of your prosperity, let them. Work with them. Don't cut off your nose to spite your face just because there happens to be some issue with them and they're not good enough to help you. You can't claim the we're being victimized and oppressed card if you're not doing everything in your disposal to actually solve any of these problems yourself. This is the feminization of the modern man. Someone else needs to come fix it. It's bad. It sucks. Look how Chad I am because I can identify all the problems. There's nothing Chad about that. It's pathetic. Okay. Let's see some of the comments here. Where's this interview? It's on, Euthanasia, on the Blood Satellite channel on YouTube. Just look up Blood Satellite. It's Dimes and Stormy Waters talked about it yesterday. Wit says he's going back to clean up. Much love, Kings. Oh, man. I'll be praying for you guys. Anybody who's in the area that can help him out. Like whether it's you wanted to send money or send resources or help in any way. If you're listening to this and you want to, I know there's some other people who are up in that area as well. We should see what's going on with Josiah. We need to, if there's any way that we can help, let me know, and I'm happy to be a hub for whatever you need. If you need resources, money, aid, communication. I don't know. Whatever we can do to help, let me know, and I'm happy to be the middleman. Okay, Stormy Water seems like an intelligent guy. Yes, he absolutely does. Stormy trying to nuke Dime's channel was the best part, right? Yeah. Stormy likes to talk, and I could hear Dime's butt puckering a few times. Euthanasia says, it blows my mind people here want to see America die. I'm like, you live here, right? Yes, thank you. Thank you. It's when you get so consumed by your hostility and antipathy for the people who have taken control of your company or trying to drive it off a cliff that you say, yeah, please drive it off the cliff. I cannot fathom that. I'm so American that I want America destroyed. What? Moral Meerkat says, how would an average guy even begin to get into the national infrastructure field? I don't know. That's a good question. I'm sure there's plenty of resources to figure that sort of thing out. If you cared, if not saying you, but if anybody cared to, there's plenty of resources out there. I mean, hell, you could just go to your local city council meeting and say, hey, this sucks. Look what happened. If we have some sort of, look at this dam, it needs to be maintained. Look what would happen if we don't do something about it. Just be the squeaky wheel. Get someone else's attention. Talk to the wealthiest person you know and say, hey, this is something I care about. This is something that's really important to me. I don't know how to solve this problem. Who can you put me in touch with who can solve this problem? And if he can't help you, have him put you in touch with 5 of his most wealthy friends to help you. And just go chase it down. If you dedicated yourself to that, if you made this your main hobby, picking some problem with your local infrastructure that you see as a major threat, then you could make something happen. Find the wealthiest or most well-connected person that you know, schedule a meeting with them, and present this to them. I mean, ideally, if you want them to take you seriously, you should go get an assessment of the problem. Do some research on historical trends or costs of repair, or hire a contractor to bid it out. All these things are all ways that people could get started. There's lots of energy for posting on the internet about whatever thing is pissing you off today, but there doesn't seem to be much energy for going and actually trying to solve these problems. KJ says it's the normie fallacy that sets in. If America dies, then the normies will finally wake up. Well, isn't it too late then? If strongmen stepped in sooner, who cares what the normies think? Yes. See, the woman gets it. The woman gets it, men. Listen to the woman. I'm not saying that ironically. I mean it seriously. All right. So, Mr. Westford, you're saying I can't sit back and keep noticing? You can keep noticing, but you can't sit back. You can keep noticing as long as you're actively moving forward. All right, so here was another thing I forgot to. I had a couple other little interesting a clip and a little blurb to share with you guys. So we'll take a brief pause to be entertained. This is the best thing. Says the best thing you're going to hear today. Don't forget that shit.
If you're serious about change, just know you're going to go through some uncomfortable situations. Stop trying to dodge the process, because in the long run, it's going to make you better. And don't forget that shit, you heard?
I don't know about you, but every so often, I need a black man on a motorcycle to drive with a microwave on his head to drive up and open the microwave door and give me some inspiring motivational advice, and then flip that door closed and zoom away. My life would be much better if this happened to me on the regular. So if any of you were trying to mess with me, you know how to get it done. Here's another little entertaining thing. I went through my Murray Rothbard stage where I worship the ground the man walked on, and I've pulled back from that, but I still find him very charming. One of my favorite clips of his, one of my favorite blurbs of his. If you haven't heard this before, then you're welcome for introducing this to you. I scrolled past it. Thank you to David Brady Jr. for re-upping this. So this is Rothbard on Clintonian ugly. Think about it. There is old prune face Warren Christopher. There is the little wispy teenager Stephanopoulos. Little Bernie Nussbaum, who looks like one of Satan's lesser assistants. Dr. Joycelyn Elders with the phony Brit accent. And twisty-faced Mickey Cantor, who might qualify as the ugliest presidential appointee of all time. But the torperoo in the Clintonian stable of deformity is the gruesome four, who I offer for the reader's horrified contemplation. The three hideous midgets, Robert Reich, Donna Shalala, and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the latter resembling and talking like nothing so much as a rather small beetle, flanking the 6'6", super ugly butch geekess Janet Reno. Ponder those four looking like generic mutants of each other. Ugly. Ugly. This is a lost spirit that must be regained. Just absolutely taking the piss out of the regime. Just mocking them. Treating them with absolute scorn. In a relatively harmless way. Like what yeah, they're going to come after you for insulting them, and if you really hit them below the belt, they're probably extra going to come after you. But bring it, you ugly freaks. There is a lot of power in this. Being like really demeaning and disrespectful to people who are in power, who are like not fulfilling their duty. Just absolutely roasting them in public, making everybody confront the fact that these are a bunch of dysgenic freaks that have no business being in their positions of power. Bring back physiognomy. We are going to mainstream physiognomy. Presidential candidates are going to be judged on their physiognomy and their phrenology. The only two hard sciences left. This is part of White Boy Summer. We're going to leave an indelible impact on society that will persist long after we're gone. So here's another funky thing. I don't know if you guys remember this. Let me see if I can actually pull this up real quick. Let's say COVID. I don't want to say the phrase yet because I'm going to let you guys wait for a few minutes. Oh, Vox. I'm sure that's going to be that's really going to be good stuff. Let me make sure this is... Yeah, okay. So, first interesting little blurb is this mysterious monolith was removed from the mountains outside Las Vegas with no explanation for origin. Look at this weird thing. Look how shiny it is. Just this weird metal monolith. A strange monolith found jutting out of the rocks in a remote mountain range near Las Vegas has been taken down by authorities. How it got there is still a mystery. It remains unknown how the item got to its location, or who might be responsible, Las Vegas police said Friday in a series of posts on X announcing the removal of the glimmering 6'4" prism. Its discovery over the weekend and quick removal because of public safety and environmental concerns revived a pandemic-era mystery that captured the public's imagination when similar objects began to appear around the world. Public safety and environmental concerns. Yes, that's the reason they removed it. When they say something vague like public safety and environmental concerns, you know that this is a bullshit cover story. Members of the police department search and rescue team found the object near Goss Peak, part of the vast Desert National Wildlife Refuge where bighorn sheep and desert tortoises can be found roaming. Remember the stream we did a while back of the Reddit posts of the guy who's a search and rescue person talking about all the bizarre, strange anomalies that they encounter? So they're way out in the middle of nowhere searching, and they stumble across this weird monolith. It says there's 3 images here. What are the others? Oh yeah, so this is the monolith. Was removed by authorities after a mysterious installation. So you can see it's like there's some concrete and some rebar, and it's driven down into that. What gets me is how shiny it is. Like, I want to know what it's made out of. Authorities say the monolith is being kept at an undisclosed location. Indeed it is. It's the latest in a series of mysterious shiny columns popping up around the globe since at least 2020. In November of that year, a similar metal monolith was found deep in the Mars-like landscape. Interesting they say Mars-like landscape of Utah's Red Rock Desert. Here's a little one of these like programming cues. Get your mind focused on Mars, constantly thinking about Mars. Then came sightings in Romania, Central California, New Mexico, and on the famed Fremont Street in downtown Las Vegas. The otherworldly structures evoke the object that appears in the Stanley Kubrick movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. All of them disappeared as quickly as they popped up. Qwerty ZZ7 says, mirrors, Matt, mirrors. Well, yeah, but like if you take a mirror and you just set out in the desert for days, then it's going to get all dusty and it's going to have it's not going to look like super polished and clean. Where, like, look at this first image here. It almost gives your mind the feeling that you're seeing through it because it's such a clear reflection. It's just the fact that obviously it doesn't line up with the geography behind it. The Utah monolith, believed to be the first in the series, had been embedded in the rock in an area so remote that officials didn't immediately reveal its location for fear of people getting lost or stranded while trying to find it. Yes, I'm sure that was their concern. They're afraid people are going to get lost or stranded out looking for something in the middle of nowhere. This is why they prevent people from going out into the middle of nowhere. It was illegally installed on federal land established to protect bighorn sheep and is home to rare plants and desert tortoises. The Desert National Wildlife Refuge, which is managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, is the largest wildlife refuge outside of Alaska and can cover the state of Rhode Island twice. It's a huge empty space, which, if you remember, all these stories, all these weird stories about bizarre things happening in the out in the middle of nowhere, they often correspond to these national parks. It's almost like maybe there was an ulterior motive in setting up these national parks. They seem to enclose these spaces where the membrane between our normally perceived physical material reality, where the membrane that separates it from the metaphysical non-material reality, it's like that membrane gets really thin in some places and you get weird sightings and weird occurrences. So are those sightings and occurrences, are they picking out whatever's causing those? Are they picking out these areas that are in national parks, or were the national parks formed around these areas to prevent development and an Indian burial ground kind of phenomenon? The police department said the object was being kept at an undisclosed location while authorities try to figure out the best way to dispose or store the massive structure made out of a reflective sheet of metal that was molded around the prism and secured with rebar and concrete. Photos accompanying the department's social media post showed the object on its side after its removal, which left a large indent in the ground because the rebar had been buried deep into the dirt and rocks. The department said it discourages anyone from venturing off marked trails or leaving objects and items behind. This poses a danger to you and the environment. Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, motherly sheriff. So here was a story from, it was written because of this, talking about the ones in the past. Into the fiery plague-written nightmare. This article was originally published on December 4, 2020. Hey, my birthday. A new monolith appeared in Nevada in June of 2024. Into the fiery plague-ridden nightmarescape of 2020, like a gift from some benevolent higher being, has come a source of true wonder and delight. The wandering monoliths of Utah, Romania, California, and New Mexico. The monoliths are long vertical slabs of metal, each 10 to 12 feet tall. They appear with no warning and disappear just as quickly. First, one in the Utah desert, which emerged on November 18 and vanished on November 27. Second, one outside the Romanian city of Piatra, I have no idea how to pronounce this, Neamt, which appeared on November 27 and disappeared on December 2. Third, one at the top of Pine Mountain in Atascadero, California, which appeared on December 2, was taken down on December 3 and reappeared on December 4. And fourth, one in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which appeared on December 7, was taken down the same day. They look like alien artifacts. In part, that's because they are heavily reminiscent of the monoliths of Stanley Kubrick's sci-fi classic 2001: A Space Odyssey, where vast black monoliths are deposited by aliens to guide human beings from one stage of evolution to the next. Kubrick or no Kubrick, all four of these real-life monoliths are eerie, solitary objects. No one knows whether another will suddenly appear or whether it too will vanish into the night. We know very little about these at all, and in fact, that seems to be part of their point. They're beautiful, inexplicable phenomena and proof the world still contains marvels. Someone had a word limit they had to reach. So here's the California monolith, the Utah monolith, and the Romanian monolith. So the first one was discovered in November in a remote desert canyon in Utah's Red Rock country. A helicopter crew counting bighorn sheep. Now this is interesting. Connection with bighorn sheep. noticed a flash of metal looming up from the ground and flew down to investigate. And there it was, deeply embedded in the red rock of the canyon floor, an enormous smooth metal triangular prism just standing there. What the heck is that? One of the workers mutters in a video released by the Utah Department of Public Safety. Okay, the intrepid explorers go down to investigate the alien life form. The canyon is remote and inaccessible without a helicopter. It's a tough place to get to on vehicle and on foot. Officials for the Department of Public Safety added they had no idea how long the monolith had been there, although Reddit sleuths used Google Maps Earth View to work out that it was installed sometime between August 2015 and October 2016. Shout out to the weaponized autists. The Utah Department of Public Safety announced the unusual find on Facebook with a cheeky alien emoji appended, and the story took off inexorably from there. A mysterious artifact that is an art project, but also maybe from aliens, discovered out of nowhere in the middle of the desert, here in the grinding misery of a plague year. What's not to love about that? Plenty, argued base jumper Andy Lewis and adventure guide Sylvan Christensen, who filmed themselves removing the monolith from the desert on October 27. They say they did so for environmental reasons. This land wasn't physically prepared for the population shift, they declared in a joint statement. The statement goes on to say that the rapid descent of masses on monolith gawkers into the pristine desert landscape with no infrastructure set up to support them caused permanent damage to the delicate ecosystem. Let's be clear, the dismantling of the Utah monolith is tragic, and if you think we're proud, we're not, they wrote. We're disappointed. Furthermore, we were too late. But the very day the Utah monolith would disappear, a new monolith surfaced. On November 27, Romanian newspapers reported finding another monolith outside the city of Piatra Neamt on the plateau of Butka Domine near an archaeological site. Like the Utah monolith, the Romanian monolith is a vast triangular prism 10 to 12 feet tall. But where the Utah monolith had a flat reflective surface, the Romanian monolith is covered in looping lines, and there's a welded seam near its base. The mayor said, my guess is some alien, cheeky, and terrible teenagers left home with their parents' UFO and started planting metal monoliths around the world. First in Utah, and then here, I'm honored they chose our city. He did not seem to harbor any worries about what monolith-based tourism would do to the natural landscape of the area. On the contrary, he said he hopes the monolith will attract more tourists. Here's a distinct contrast between the American sentiment and the international sentiment. But 4 days after it arrived, it vanished overnight. Its disappearance so far remains a mystery. So it's this massive tourist target, but then just mysteriously vanishes. And on the same day that it vanished, a new monolith appeared in California at the top of a mountain off a hiking path. According to local news reports, the California monolith is another triangular prism, 10 feet tall and about 18 inches wide, around the same height as the Utah and Romanian monoliths, but a little narrower. Like the Utah monolith, it has a smooth surface. It appears to be made out of stainless steel. Unlike the Utah monolith, it hasn't been embedded into the ground. A hard push could topple it over. This is odd, these differences. On December 3, it got that push. A group of young men who apparently drove 5 hours to San Luis Obispo County had live-streamed themselves destroying the monolith on the blockchain site DLive. Dressed in camo gear, night vision goggles, and Trump paraphernalia, the group chanted America first and Christ is king as they rocked the monolith back and forth. Christ is king in this country. We don't want illegal aliens from Mexico or outer space, a man in the video says, so let's tear this bitch down. Once they'd brought the monolith to the ground, they put up a wooden cross in its place and then dragged the monolith down the mountain. Based. It was fine because it was funny, a man says toward the end of the stream. On December 4, the California monolith returned. Unlike the Utah and Romania monoliths, we do actually know who is responsible for the California monolith. It was built by Atascadero residents Travis Kenny, his father Randall Kenny, Wade McKenzie, and Jared Riddle. They're local metal artists, and they were inspired by the appearance of the two other monoliths. Figuring that there are 3 monoliths in 2001 A Space Odyssey, they decided to complete the trilogy themselves, and after it was torn down, they decided to bring it back. It was meant to be something fun, a change of pace from the kind of conversations 2020 has been plagued with so much negativity and separation among the people in our country. So this one here was a copycat. But the other two had weird differences. They seemed to be made out of different material, and the one is like smooth and shiny, and the other one has these looping circles on it. And then there was a fourth one in Albuquerque that was torn down. They were beating it with sledgehammers. So, what's very interesting? Well, let's see what the theories they have here. They don't seem to be coming from the same source. It now seems apparent the Utah monolith was the work of one person, and the monoliths that have followed are copycats from people like Travis Kenny following in its example. Are they some sort of cynical guerrilla ad campaign? That was one of my thoughts with it. This is like some ad campaign for a movie or something like that. Considering the Utah monolith dates back to 2015, that seems unlikely. It would be a hell of a slow burn of a marketing push. One popular theory notes that the Utah monolith site is close to some of the 2015 shooting locations for the HBO drama Westworld and suggests it might be a leftover prop or a prank by a member of the crew. Another theory suggests the monoliths are an anonymous art installation, with the Utah monolith created by one original artist and then a series of copycats following. And in that case, the most pressing question becomes, who is the artist? The Prankster Art Collective, the most famous artist, has taken credit for both the Utah and California monoliths on social media. The group is even offering an authentic alien monolith for sale on its website for $45,000. But shortly after the most famous artist made its claim, Travis Kenny and his group took credit for the California monolith, posting images of them constructing the monolith to social media to prove it was them. It's still possible the most famous artist was behind the Utah monolith, but this development casts severe doubt on its claim over the California one. A strong early contender for the original artist behind the Utah monolith was the minimalist sculptor John McCracken, who died in 2011. His signature work were his planks, freestanding slabs of metal he would lean against a wall. He himself used to say he believed his planks influenced the designer of the monoliths in 2001: A Space Odyssey. He believed in aliens and wanted his work to resemble alien artifacts. Even before I did concerted studies of UFOs, he once said, it helped me maintain my focus to think I was trying to do the kind of work that would have been brought here by a UFO. Art newspaper noted shortly after the Utah monolith appeared that it bore a striking resemblance to one of his planks. And his son told the New York Times that his father had once envisioned setting up art installations in remote places for viewers to stumble upon in the wild. He was inspired by the idea of alien visitors leaving objects that resembled his work or that his work resembled. This discovery of a monolith piece that's very much in line with his artistic vision. Finally, this other guy believed it to be a genuine McCracken, but the tide has turned against that theory. Upon reviewing photos of the Utah monolith more closely, that other guy has retracted his original statement to the Times and concluded that McCracken, who preferred to make his sculptures by hand, would not have built the machine-made Utah monolith. Evidence seems to be mounting now that the monoliths are the work of one or more artists heavily inspired by the work of John McCracken, but who could the mystery artists be? So, the way that what this has me thinking is it's part of some kind of a science experiment of some sort. Essentially, how would I say this? So, whether it's some sort of frequency transmission device, or it's got to be associated with something related to the the secret anti-gravitic technology operations within deep parts of the U.S. intelligence community, tying into Antarctica and all of that stuff. It's very obvious that this sort of thing has been happening. All these off books projects and operations. This is what the UAP are, I believe. This is like advanced technology that's been created and generated over the last 70 or 80 years. And we've gotten leaks about stuff like from Bob Lazar. And then there's a whole bunch of other people who are all talking about similar things. And you can kind of triangulate all of these things to deduce that there's something related to that going on here. That would be my theory about it. And I don't think that this is necessarily precluded by the idea of an artist doing that. All of these kinds of weird, esoteric intelligence traditions have always worked with weird artists. And they're deeply embedded in all the conspiracy communities and everything, and they kind of operate as a single entity. So I'm sure that it's related to that. It also brings to mind the weird lasers that there's videos showing up all over social media of especially in stormy weather, there's these big lasers coming down. And then, there's I don't know how much I can talk freely about this on the channel. So I'll just say the things that happened in Hawaii and blue roofs and such things. There's weird technological things that are happening behind the scenes under the surface. And I think that those things really matter. I think listening to the people who are talking about this, not necessarily just taking what they're saying at face value, but recognizing what this means, the significance of having what's functionally operating as like a breakaway civilization of sorts that's massively advancing technologically beyond where we are, and then we get the trickle downs from that. Well, a lot of this is starting to become more and more open sourced, and I think it's inevitable that whatever these sorts of operations are, they're going to be brought into the light. And what they're doing right now is essentially negotiating with how that's going to happen, how they're going to sell it, and what sort of new religion or whatever they're going to create out of it. Euthanasia says, any idea about the quantum computing stuff being talked about from Stormy? That stuff is like completely over my head. I have no idea. I find it really interesting and I want to learn more. I want to know more about it, but I can't even begin to have a conversation about it because I'm the one who should be sitting and listening to that. That is another endorsement of that conversation yesterday. Go listen to Stormy talking to Dimes on Blood Satellite. So here's another fun schizo theory that I like. Hold on. I found it weird he was talking about qubits. He was talking about here. I'll write it for you because I was thinking the same thing at first, and then I realized I've heard about this talk before. I've heard this talked about before. Qubits, like the letter Q bits. So quantum bits. It's an abbreviation for quantum bits. Because that's the first thing I thought he was like. I was qubits. I was trying to figure out how qubits, like the measuring distance, how this would correspond to quantum computing and everything. And then I realized what he was saying. So one of my favorite schizo theories is the idea that many large mountains and rock monuments and stuff that we see are actually like the remains of petrified trees. The more that I hear this theory, the more it seems very, very plausible to me. And this one is kind of interesting. So this is just an interesting visual thing. This guy says, I hope you can change your mind about some caves and mountains that we've been saying for some time are actually the remains of giant trees from our past. So if you think of times in the past, we were talking about water a little bit ago. So if more water is associated with more growth and more prosperity, and if we know that we're actually in like a cooler time in Earth's history, there's been times where it was much warmer, and those warmer periods would have been associated with much more growth, then which also corresponds to people talk about giant humans and talk about giants in the Bible. And there's the theories about Adam and Eve being much taller than we are, 15 feet tall or whatever. And I find it completely plausible that prior to whatever major global cataclysm, whatever date you apply the flood to, the flood from the Bible, whether this is the Younger Dryas period or something more recent to it or whatever, there's obviously been these like massive temperature swings and mass flooding throughout the earth. And these are associated, and when you have much hotter temperatures and much more humidity, this is going to correspond to much greater growth. So the idea that you could have had trees that are where their trunks are the size of mountains, I don't think is completely implausible. And if you look at what happens to petrified wood as it gradually, especially under pressure, gradually turns into stone, then I don't think it's completely implausible at all. A lot of the patterns that you see in the stone, I think could be seen as like fragmenting tree rings and stuff. It's just, if you don't look at it at the right scale, you're not going to necessarily recognize what you're seeing. So this video is kind of an interesting way of illustrating this if you think of it on a larger scale. I'm going to mute the music because it doesn't provide anything really, and I'm sure it's going to get copyrighted or something. There's no other audio in the video, so he's just climbing through this. What looks like a hollowed out root or something like that. You're kind of seeing the phenomenon of how a tree might grow and develop, and it creates this cave underneath it. You're going to get a better view of it in a second. The cameraman kind of sucks. So this is like the inside of the tree has been hollowed out. And it's forming what looks a lot like if I was just looking at this image, I might not think that was wood. I might think that this is like the inside of a stone cave. Just give it several thousand years of wear and settling and all that, and then just imagine this on a 50 or I don't know 2,000 times scale. Let me see if I can pull up, close this tab. Let me see if I can pull up some of the images. Oh yeah, here we go. This will get you all the the people that freak out about flat Earth, about flat earthers, really go crazy when you start talking about mountains as trees. So here are some of these examples. So like this one here, give me a good image of this. So this isn't the best one, but you kind of see there's a sort of a similar formation here. This is the type of thing I'm talking about, though. See, I could completely believe that this was once a gigantic tree, especially if you listening to Randall Carlson talk about the mass flooding that went on all across the western part of the United States. So if you imagine this was once a gigantic tree and it got maybe it got felled by some ancient technology and then hardened into a rock basically, and a lot of it got swept around by that massive flooding, and but it left this formation here. So they're making the case that, oh, you can explain this completely mundanely. And yeah, of course you can't explain it completely mundanely, but what if? Some of the more compelling ones are like this. I think this is called, is it Devil's Tower, I believe? Yeah, Devil's Tower. Here's another one. See, I just want to live in a reality where this is the case. Where like that's actually the actual history. Like, wouldn't that be so much fun? And here's another one. At its height, this tree trunk was 2.5 miles around. So there, you could see the patterns in the rock look vaguely like tree rings on a massive, massive scale. How cool would it be to live in a reality where once upon a time, these massive rock structures were actually trees? That's how big trees were. Okay. So one last schizo theory, and then we got a couple other things for you. So a massive ocean was recently found hiding 700 kilometers beneath Earth's surface, and it changes what we know about the origins of water. Imagine an ocean vaster than all the water on Earth's surface combined, hidden 700 kilometers beneath our feet. This is the mind-boggling discovery scientists at Northwestern University have unveiled, shaking our understanding of where Earth's water comes from. For years, scientists have debated the origins of Earth's water. Comets were prime suspects, delivering their icy payloads through impacts, but this new discovery throws a wrench in that theory. Researchers, led by geophysicist Stephen Jacobson, stumbled upon a colossal water reservoir trapped within the Earth's mantle, a scorching hot layer beneath the crust. This hidden ocean, 3 times the size of its surface counterparts, is cradled within a mineral called ringwoodite. Now, this is very interesting, this ringwoodite. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. Scientists deployed a network of 2,000 seismographs across the U.S., listening to the whispers of the Earth itself. By analyzing the faint tremors from over 500 earthquakes, they noticed a curious slowdown in the seismic waves as they passed through specific regions of the mantle. This slowdown hinted at the presence of water, acting like a sponge within the rock. This discovery completely rewrites our understanding of Earth's water cycle. It suggests water isn't just a surface phenomenon, but potentially exists within the mantle, migrating through cracks and crevices. Jacobson emphasizes the importance of this reservoir, stating, without this internal water source, Earth's surface would likely be a barren landscape with only mountain peaks peeking out from a vast ocean. The implications are far-reaching, yada, yada, yada. This could revolutionize our understanding of how water moves within our planet, a fundamental process shaping Earth's history and potentially influencing the existence of life. So, talking about this ringwoodite, I found this other source from earth.com. And geological processes on the Earth's surface, such as earthquakes or erupting volcanoes, are an expression of what's going on inside the Earth out of sight. I think we're finally seeing evidence for a whole Earth water cycle, which may help explain the vast amount of liquid water on the surface of our habitable planet. Scientists have been looking for this missing deep water for decades. Scientists have long speculated about the existence of water trapped in the Earth's mantle, located between the lower and upper mantle at depths of 250 to 410 miles. Jacobson and Schmant are the first are the first to provide direct evidence of water in this transition zone on a regional scale, extending across most of the interior of the United States. That's very interesting. Melting of rock at this depth is remarkable because most melting in the mantle occurs much shallower in the upper 50 miles. If there's a substantial amount of H2O in the transition zone, then some melting should take place in areas where there is flow into the lower mantle, and that is consistent with what we found. Now here's where it gets really interesting. The water discovered in the mantle is not in a form familiar to us. It is not liquid, ice, or vapor. Instead, it is trapped inside the molecular structure of the minerals in the mantle rock. The immense pressure created by 250 miles of solid rock, along with temperatures above 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, causes water molecules to split and form hydroxyl radicals, which can be bound into a mineral's crystal structure. Whether or not this unique sample is representative of the Earth's interior composition is not known, however, Jacobson said. Now we have found evidence for extensive melting between North America at the same depths corresponding to the dehydration of ringwoodite, which is exactly what has been happening in my experiments. Ringwoodite is a high-pressure mineral with a captivating blue hue. It was named after the Australian geologist Alfred Ringwood, and it forms deep within the Earth's mantle at depths between 410 and 660 kilometers. What makes ringwoodite truly remarkable is its ability to store water within its crystal structure. Now, I'll call your attention back to the stream I did a few days ago about the water and the water seeming to have some sort of a consciousness or intelligence to it. It has an ability to encode or embed human consciousness, human memories or thoughts. And then Robert Edward Grant had his thesis his theory about the designs, the astrological designs that are painted, carved, engraved somehow inside the pyramid, inside the king's chamber of the Great Giza pyramid. And he speculated that it could have been like monks or shamans or whatever who were making these drawings, making these engravings with their mind, because of the way the human mind can interface with water, and then water has this capacity where it exists within the molecular structure of certain types of crystalline rock. So like the crystalline effects that form within water, there's something, I don't know what to do with all of this, but I'm seeing a connection with all these different things. The fact that there's this massive undersea or under earth, under mantle, underground, I don't know exactly what to refer to it as because jury's still out for me on what the actual shape of our earth is. But having all this water underneath there, and then particularly having it underneath North America, where it already seems like the arc of history is bending toward North America becoming kind of the central hub of the world that everything else moves out from. Yeah, subterranean, thank you. The having this gigantic ocean of water underneath North America, I think it's just something I'm gonna file away for the future. John MC says, interesting about water, similar to theories about petroleum and natural gas deposits. Whatever it is, it's pretty certain that petroleum, etc., is not from condensed dinosaur juice. Right. Yeah, very clear. Euthanasia says, when you talk about that, it makes me think of the Metalocalypse episode where they're recording their album on water. Well, that's interesting. I've never heard of that. I'll search it based on what you sent me there. If there's more info that I should know, then I'm going to look that up after the show. Related to this, spotted nearby in Cozumel 2 days ago and still going strong. No reports or official investigations yet. It seems like subterranean water is being pushed through a hole to the surface. It's very interesting. Just taking these stories together. Hold on. Go away. Taking these stories together is I don't know. I think we've only just begun to discover how our Earth operates and what our relationship is to it. And water is something that's very fundamental to that. And we barely understand what water is. As I've been looking at some of the plasmoid technology, like the Malcolm Bendel's thunderstorm generator, and I'm starting to, of course, as I'm talking about this stuff, I'm starting to get other plasma stuff in my algorithm. But I think we're on the cusp of uncovering various technologies or technological applications of our experience of the Earth. I think we're right on the cusp of a massive explosion that the species is going to barely be able to contain. But the effect of it is going to be a drastic change in a lot of patterns, a lot of cyclical patterns. There's been all these people that have these free energy ideas, and I, like, personally, from like, my starting premise is there's no such thing as free energy. That the energy has a cost. The question is, what are those costs going to be, and how much are they going to be? But starting from that premise, then having cheaper energy, being able to, like, access electrons being pushed up through the Earth's surface by pressure on granite way underneath, being able to like, access the native electrical patterns in the ether around us. The rediscovery of or not rediscovery, but the coming to grips with the ether, the presence of the ether, and what that tells us about the structure and nature of reality, and what light is, and light's relationship to water, and then the light and water and gravity and the correspondence they have to each other. The entire model of physics that has occupied the mainstream for the last 100 years is very evidently broken. Even on their own terms, it doesn't operate at all scales. They have different models for each scale, and the models preclude each other. And then there's just a bunch of evidence that's just thrown out because it's politically inconvenient. And the people who are throwing it out are explicitly saying this is potentially viable evidence, but we're refusing to consider it on political, philosophical grounds. So there's people who've had these free energy, quote unquote, ideas for a long time, and they, sort of magically disappear or decide to shoot themselves in the back of the head a couple of times. What's different now is this is part of the deal with, if you see the internet and social media and all these things as like a tool of the regime for establishing consensus and manipulating and degenerating people. Yes, it is one of those things. But the flip side of it, their deal with the devil, is that now people who are beginning to study this sort of thing and are actually doing it intelligently, they're open sourcing everything that they do. So just taking one person out isn't going to be sufficient. You have to come up with some sort of pretext for eliminating that potential segment of industry. And they've had the tools, the apparatuses, to eliminate certain industrial segments. But now the entire meme is on the rise that this phenomenon exists, where the different bureaucratic elements and institutions of the regime are in bad faith and for malevolent reasons targeting and trying to eliminate various different industries. This is where you get kind of the horseshoe theory, where the right wing and the left wing, the real dyed-in-the-wool radicals, are both like, we say fuck these guys, you say fuck those guys, but in general, it's like, fuck this whole dynamic that's happening. So that sort of thing is like, you can't put this toothpaste back in the tube. You can't make these discoveries and advances in understanding and technology, and they have terms like elevating consciousness and this sort of thing. And I think they're looking at something that's real. I think they've got a broken model of what that is, of what elevating our consciousness means. But taking for granted that they are actually identifying a phenomenon there, I think that you can't undo these sorts of things. So this is part of the deal with the devil from the regime's perspective, is that technologies like social media and the internet can be weaponized from the bottom up in the same way that they're weaponized from the top down. So they're increasingly having to just compromise on all their different agendas Like if I want this thing to go, then I need to compromise here, and I need to compromise here, and I need to compromise here, which provides a lot of opportunities for ultimately letting them hang themselves with their own rope, as I believe is happening. Okay, so that's all the schizo stuff that I have for today. Now I've got some kind of funny social stuff related to men's brains. So there's a kerfuffle from this article on GQ. You got this very sober image of Idris Elba sitting in an airplane, looking serious and masculine. Why men are raw dogging flights. This is a candidate for headline of the year. I've got DMs on Instagram like, bro, you need to teach us how to bareback flights, says a pioneer of the swashbuckling trend. So we're reading words by a woman. She says, everyone has their own tricks for staving off boredom on a long-haul flight. Some people load up on podcast episodes. Others power through the available in-flight entertainment. But no one simply sits staring silently at the real-time flight map on the screen in front of them for the entirety of a trip, right? Wrong. A small group of hardy men. Okay, so this is a small group of hardy men. We're getting this framing. The gender that brought you frat hazing and Logan Paul. Oh, okay, so barebacking a flight, raw dogging a flight, just sitting there, not consuming, just sitting there, enjoying your surroundings and letting your mind think and process. This is associated with frat hazing and Logan Paul. What do these things have to do with one another? Is this showing like the expanded capacity of men? That men can both have frat hazing and Logan Paul, and they can also revolutionarily sit and do nothing? A small group of men, the gender that brought you frat hazing and Logan Paul, are now doing exactly that, and for a variety of surprisingly solid reasons. Surprisingly. It's surprising that they're just sitting there doing nothing. This is the ultimate peek into the female psychology. What are the men doing? It must be bad. Wait, it's not bad? A 26-year-old Londoner named West, who asked to use only his first name, went viral in May when he posted about his decision to forego any entertainment and pass a 7-hour trip watching the flight map. Anyone else bareback flights? He asked in the caption. The concept, referred to in a vivid and perhaps unfortunate parlance as raw dogging, flying raw, and bareback, resonated with many in the comments on West's TikTok page. At West was here. Yep, from London to Miami this week. Pure bareback, no food or water, one wrote. I swear barebacking flights make it go quicker, another added. I've got DMs on Instagram like, bro, you need to teach us how to bareback flights, West tells GQ. Remember how we've talked about how the mainstream is always going out to the fringe and trying to find the thing from the fringe and bring it back to the... Like, this is where they're having to go for stories. This is the cool, cutting edge. This is the new mainstream. White Boy Summer is fully engaged. Quoting, I'm a nervous flyer and generally cannot focus on anything on a plane. Movies, TV shows, books, articles, whatever, with any success, says Luke Winky, a 33-year-old staff writer at Slate who has used the flight map as his only in-flight entertainment for years. For some reason, I don't like processing new information when I'm in the air. I want to stick to things that are predictable and safe. Sounds weak. For West, who has since posted multiple videos from his raw flights, including his longest, a 21-hour slog from London to Perth, Australia, the practice simply resulted from how much he has to travel for his work in the music industry. I got sick of watching the same movies, he says. West likens flying raw to meditation. Visually, you're kind of impaired. You only get to look at the seat in front of you to your right or left if you're at the window. All you hear is that drumming sound of the engine. It's just white noise. But West and others have also come to see raw dogging flights as a kind of challenge, like the Tough Mudder or No Nut November, the goal being to see how fully participants can deprive themselves of creature comforts, up to and including free snack and drinks and even bathroom visits. A true raw dogger takes no indulgences. This is based. West says that the women who have commented on his videos are usually doing so to express shock. Taking flights raw seems to be a masculine thing, he says. Everything's about looking cool. Most guys embrace it as a joke or like, we're so hard, David Goggins has nothing on us. Winky agrees. I don't think men have the same treat culture that women do, which is frankly a shame, he says. A long flight for women is the perfect venue to organize an entire itinerary of treats. And I do think men tend to be more stoic and weird about the spaces in which they allow themselves to receive pleasure. Would that this was the case. I think men do have that tendency, but probably not enough of us actually indulge that tendency. Still, Wes says that a recent trip from London to Bali, 20 hours, taught him that there are benefits to raw dogging beyond its meditative nature. His best ideas, he says, have come from the time spent locked into the flight map, just thinking. I'm there like, oh, we're flying over Afghanistan. Oh, we're going at 36,000 feet instead of 37, he says. Or like, I think that's a good idea as a new series on my TikTok. The experience left him refreshed. When I saw my mom upon landing, she was like, you have so much energy, he recalls. And I'm like, I feel fine. I feel recharged. I feel like I've been able to have time to myself. The last benefit may be the most significant. Everyone else leaves you alone. This is, for a man in particular, oh yes. Everyone leaves you alone. West recalls how a man who was seated next to him in a middle aisle opted to squeeze past two people on his other side rather than disturb West. He must have been like, I do not want to bother him right now, West says with a laugh. He's locked into his altitude. So if you understand mimesis, you'll understand the power of something like this. This woman is, I'm grateful to her for her useful idiocy. She's someone, Minoan says, this writer needs to find another career. Yeah. She is signal boosting this thing because she's creeped out by it. And it's, having this sort of thing signal boosted is really good. It's becoming cool and fashionable to just sit with your mind, to just sit with your thoughts and allow creativity to form naturally, organically. In a world where we're constantly inundated with input and sensory data and being overwhelmed by content, losing our attention span, we're seeing it swing back the other way now. All of these things come and go in cycles. We're now on the trend where protecting your mind, protecting your consciousness, protecting your attention, only dedicating it to the things that you value most. This is becoming fashionable. This is the new mainstream. This is a very good thing. I'm grateful to her for, in her womanness, freaking out and being like, hey, look at this weird thing the guys are doing. She's just establishing this as fashionable. It's now fashionable to just sit and contemplate and think. Now, this is going to have some bad effects because there's some people that if they sit and just contemplate their own mind, they're going to lose it. They've been losing it and didn't realize it. Once they start contemplating it, they're going to realize how much of their mind they've lost. They're going to freak out. So we see yet another divergence, another haves and have-nots developing. What this is also going to bring is a huge flow of creativity. It's good when the men begin tapping into their inner masculine spirit, coming up with creative ideas and then applying them. Even if the ideas themselves suck, just flexing those muscles is a good thing. Kate says, these freaks have to sexualize everything because their brains are so broken by porn. Or is the term raw dogging flights just a term men came up with because men are just obsessed with sex? Or are men just broken by porn that they had to come up with a sexualized name for an innocuous activity? I would say all of the above. As a man who makes all these same types of jokes with my buddies, like the fact that it's transgressive is part of the appeal. And yes, our brains have all been broken by porn. And men are naturally driven by sexual impulse. So, Euthanasia says, I think it's just men's locker room humor stuff. Yeah. And that's what, this is part of the way men speak their own secret language to each other. And the fact that it gets women riled up is kind of the point. And so then women will get riled up about it. And it's like, okay, success. We did it. We accomplished what we were trying to do. We trolled the women. She says, God, it also has a lot of Zoomer vibes to it since they have a weird sense of humor. Yeah, this is men online. This is White Boy Summer. This is the same thing that brought you White Boy Summer is what brings you the idea of raw dogging flights. And it's really it's visual too. Like it's effective communication because it really implants that that visual in your mind. So I'm raw dogging it. I'm not using any kind of protection. I'm not using any sort of it's like raw and authentic. So a funny kind of related story here. This is from Vicegrad24 on Twitter. Breaking. Come on, share. Breaking. The Taliban have demanded that Afghan women are not allowed to attend the upcoming UN conference in Afghanistan in Qatar on June 20th. The Taliban also demanded that all discussions about women's rights are removed from the agenda. The UN has agreed to the demands. Let me see. I just reminded me of another video. Let me see if I can find it. Let's see. How would I find this video? There was a woman who was, maybe you guys have seen this and you could remind me of some of the keywords for it so I could find it. I'll spoil it. There was a woman who was talking to, oh, here it is. I found it. Oh, come on. Oh, Jesus. Okay. Facebook is just absolutely the worst. Okay, come on. Here we go. So, full screen.
Taliban president.
Oh, alhamdulillah.
Would that still include?
Okay, I'll read this for some of you guys because it might be hard to follow. Taliban fighters laugh off question on electing women politicians.
Taliban president.
Oh, alhamdulillah.
Yes, thank God that is not far off.
Would that still include women's rights and a democracy?
Rights would adhere to Islamic Sharia law.
So would you believe in the democratic vote, though? So would people be allowed to vote in women politicians?
Stop filming.
Stopping.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to ask. It doesn't.
It made me laugh. That just remind. Oh, shut up! Stop! Go away. That's what that reminded me of. Based Talichads, says Vorpal Anvil. So you have this woman. She shows up. This journalist. She shows up. She's all hair covered, everything looking all modest, and she's like, "So I've come in here and I've taken on your culture. Now will you let me subvert it? Are you going to allow me to subvert your culture? Will you let us come in and bring our subversion and our degeneracy, weasel it in through feminism?" And these guys just laugh them off. Now it's very interesting. Now, assuming this is true, I haven't really dug into this, but when I looked through the replies, there was no one saying that. Everyone was mad that the UN agreed to it. Nobody was saying, no, this isn't true. What I think is really funny is that the UN agreed to this. This says a lot. It says a lot about the perceived power, the self-perceived power that the UN has, their perception of their own ability to enforce things right now. For whatever reason, they really want Afghanistan there. It says something about the state of Afghanistan as a political entity. They have the ability to make these sorts of demands that fly directly in the face of this would have been a perfect time for the UN to the headlines would have written themselves, highlighting the Taliban as the evil, the awful patriarchy. Now, perhaps that undermines the immigration agenda, but this is a great example of the consequence crisis coming home to roost. Shout out Jason from the 2-Bit podcast and his concept, the consequence crisis. The very agendas that they've undertaken to try to inflate and enhance their own power are now forcing them into insanity. Now forcing them to have to accept these multiple different conflicting things. This is the sign of an institution on its downfall, an institution that's collapsing. Here's another article from Psychology Today. So this is not exactly like Amren or something. New research finds huge differences between male and female brains. You think? A new study shows huge differences with no overlap between women and men. A new study from Stanford shows remarkable differences between female and male brains. The researchers found no overlap between male and female and rejected the idea of a continuum. Male pattern brain connectivity predicted male cognitive function, but not female cognitive function. Female pattern brain connectivity predicted female cognitive function, but not male cognitive function. Are male brains really that different from female brains? Does it matter? Why should anybody care? More than 100 years ago, a German neurologist published a book titled Über den physiologischen Schwachsinn. Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have never tried that. Regarding the physiological weak-mindedness of women. Mobius noted that women's brains are smaller than the brains of men, even after adjusting for differences in height. He concluded that women are physiologically weak-minded. In making that claim, Mobius was continuing a tradition in Western thought that we could trace back to Aristotle, namely, women and men are different. That means men are better. The misogynistic arguments of men from Aristotle to Mobius have made many modern researchers leery of claims regarding female and male differences in the brain. Now, I actually don't mind the use of misogynistic here because this is actually technically appropriate. This is the actual technical definition of misogyny. Book titled Strange German Noises. Yeah, right. Shout out to Space Age Maximalist. I hope he never listens to this. I'll never be able to look him in the eye. But interestingly, researchers are no longer leery of those things. It'll be interesting to see why. Researchers have long since established that there are, in fact, no differences in average intelligence between men and women. But investigators have consistently found that women are more likely than men to experience anxiety and depression. Conversely, men are more likely than women to have autism, attention deficit disorder, and schizophrenia. Are these male-female differences merely social constructs? Or might these robust differences in psychopathology reflect, at least in part, some underlying difference in neuroanatomy or neural connectivity? A recent review of MRI studies of female and male brains concluded that MRI-based studies exploring differences between male and female brains revealed mostly inconsistent and inconclusive findings. Others have argued that while there might be differences on average between male and female brains, the differences are on a continuum with lots of overlap. But researchers at Stanford recently used artificial intelligence methods, AI, to examine brain activity in roughly 1,500 young adults 20 to 35 years of age. So think about this. This is a generation that's probably been the most subjected to the longhouse, that's been the most feminized. 20 to 35 years of age. So it's crossing from late millennials to early Zoomers. Neuroscientists have known for many years that every human brain is characterized by a fingerprint of brain activity at rest, unique to that individual. The Stanford neuroscientist used big data artificial intelligence techniques to determine the fingerprint of every one of those 1,500 young adults and then compared females with males. Did females differ from males? Was there overlap? The results were astonishing. Look at this image here. There's zero connectivity, zero continuum. As you could see, there wasn't a continuum. The female fingerprints of brain activity were quite different from the male fingerprints of resting brain activity, with no overlap. These findings strongly suggest that what's going on in a woman's brain at rest is significantly different from what's going on in a man's brain at rest. Just as remarkably, the Stanford team mapped fMRI patterns of connectivity onto cognitive functions such as intelligence. They found particular patterns of connectivity within male brains that accurately predicted cognitive functions such as intelligence. However, that male model had no predictive power for cognitive functions in women. Conversely, they found particular patterns of connectivity within female brains that accurately predicted cognitive functions such as intelligence among women. However, that female model had no predictive power over cognitive functions in men. These findings strongly suggest that the determinants of cognitive functions in male brains are profoundly different than the determinants of cognitive functions in female brains. So this is the comparison. Strong correlation, zero correlation. I have to admit that I was really surprised by these results. I've been writing about these topics for more than 20 years. In the first edition of my book, Why Gender Matters, published by Doubleday in 2005, I devoted a chapter to kids who are psychologically gender atypical. I suggested that these kids are somewhere in between male and female, but the Stanford study provides little support for that claim. I'm hopeful that the researchers will do follow-up studies specifically looking at individuals who are gender nonconforming, gender atypical, and who have gender dysphoria to see whether and how these characteristics influence these findings. The researchers are well aware of the implications of their findings. They know all about the previous studies suggesting small effect sizes, lots of overlap, and a continuum of male-female differences. They conclude that the failure of previous work to demonstrate these huge effects is due to the weaker algorithms employed in earlier research. So basically, they're just able to define this with a lot better specificity. By taking in much larger samples. And not just larger samples, but they're able to actually identify some of these patterns and track them out in a lot more simple, straightforward way than it would take without the aid of the large language models. They conclude, our results provide the most compelling and generalizable evidence to date, refuting this continuum hypothesis and firmly demonstrating sex differences in the functional organization of the human brain. There has been little coverage of this report in the mainstream media. You'll find no mention of this study in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, or National Public Radio. I suspect that's because most mainstream media are cautious of anything having to do with brain-based differences between women and men. Many of us are understandably wary that any claim of difference will lead to claims regarding ability. If men's brains are different from women's brains, doesn't that imply that men will be better at some things and women will be better at other things? Especially when there is no overlap in the findings. But different doesn't necessarily imply better. As I stressed in the second edition of my book, Why Gender Matters, apples and oranges are different. That doesn't mean apples are better than oranges. Men and women are turning out to be different, more different than we may have imagined. That doesn't mean that women are better than men or vice versa, but it does suggest that if we ignore the differences, we may disadvantage both women and men. So, of course, we get our token, don't take this too far, which I agree. There is no, the fact that men and women are different does not and should not imply that one is somehow better than the other. What it means is that one is better at some things and the other is better at other things. What are those things? Well, we have to determine what those things are. I'd say that we already understand a lot of that, and these people are just coming along with. It's like this is the ultimate of the Western materialist rationalist mind, that you're not going to believe something that's very obviously like a foundational truth until your science has proven it to you. And it's like we didn't need a large language model to tell us that men and women's brains are different. All we needed to do was interact with men and women. But this is yet another very interesting example of how the tools and apparatuses of the regime that the regime is utilizing for all sorts of nefarious purposes bring with them a cost to the regime. This sort of thing is only going to continue to be magnified. This is one of the great things about these large language models. There was a story, I should have pulled this out, I just remembered it. There was a story about how there was a guy that's using large language models to research particular subjects, and he's essentially, it's basically like his college. Now he's using it he can become like an expert in any particular domain by just he has a particular set of prompts, and he says, tell me about this issue and do it in this way, and like speak at this level and be wary of these particular things and whatever. We did the other episode about the VR and the VR capacity and using VR goggles to help kids in education. There's so many positive applications to these sorts of things, and this is true of I don't want to say all technology, because I'm sure there might be some technology that just has no positive application apart from being a cautionary tale, but virtually all technology. It's going to have the positive effect and the negative effect, and our job is to enhance the positive effects and minimizing the negative effects, and accepting that we're never going to be able to eliminate the negative effects. Like, our responsibility is not to accomplish building the city of God on earth. Our job is to engage in the process of building the city of God on earth and leaving the results to God. We already know the results. We know the end of the story. It's been revealed to us. And our job is to play our role in moving toward that end. Which comes back to the thing I was talking about at the beginning about not focusing your mind on trying to stamp out the bad, but actually focusing it on enhancing the good. Ultimately, AI, like, it's funny that people talk about it as intelligence, and that literally the name is artificial intelligence. If it's artificial, it's not real. It's not actual intelligence. So it's just it's another medium. It's another medium that's going to reflect and reveal humanity back to itself. So if we believe that these things are embedded in reality as truths, then something that's revelatory about reality is going to reveal the truth. So we can use it to do that, and we can amplify it when it does happen. $5 super chat, $5 Canadian, from Slosher. He says, Jonathan Haidt wrote in The Righteous Mind how students in college had trouble explaining why incest is wrong, but high school grads didn't. Huh. That's interesting. Probably says a lot about the colleges. Let me catch up on some of these other super chats, or some of these other comments you guys are making here. Josh says, when reality keeps being labeled misogynistic, it will make one pause. Yeah, indeed. So I appreciate when they actually use it properly. Daniel G says, where can I find the stream discussing search and rescue stories? Euthanasia has got you here. Thank you, man. He says, it's the King Pilled live episode titled Trump Down on His Luck Resorts to Crime. It's the last half or so of the episode. John MC says, so Larry Summers of Harvard was right, of course, when he commented on probable reasons for the fact that there are fewer women in higher math. Indeed. Alul says, tech is ambivalent, as Crypto says about Alul. I heard an interesting case recently. Where was I listening? It was talking about tech. It was listening to something from Daniel Schmachtenberger, who I have a lot of appreciation for him, but I haven't listened to him in a long time, and coming back to him, just how much he's dominated by the evolutionary theory of viewing humans basically entirely in material evolutionary terms, which is kind of ironic because then he's also talking about the necessity of virtue and courage and love and the things that have no material bearing. There's just a space for them in the rationalist evolutionary lib mind. But he was talking about technology having like virtue embedded in it, because the technology exists for a certain premise, and the application of it toward that premise presumes that premise is good. There was something interesting in that made me think, because I've thought for a long time that technology is ambivalent. It's neutral. It's a natural outworking of human behavior. Humans naturally use and generate technologies as they act. So I'm sure there's some nuance there that could be parsed out if I thought about it for a little while, but this is just kind of me thinking out loud. Okay. Last two stories. One of them is, we've talked a lot about Project 2025, and I've been waiting for the mainstream to really come on board and start talking about it, and it's been very interesting to me that they aren't. Well, here you go. AP News, the cucks themselves. Conservative-backed group is creating a list of federal workers it suspects could resist Trump plans. I was wondering how exactly they were going to frame it, and this is great. It's a list of federal workers that it suspects could resist Trump plans. They know their audience. This is very good. This is very good framing for them. So this is Tom Jones, a political activist and former Capitol Hill aide to Republican senators, is pictured in Bardstown, Kentucky. From his home office in small-town Kentucky, a seasoned political operative is quietly investigating scores of federal employees suspected of being hostile to the policies of Republican Donald Trump, a highly unusual and potentially chilling effort that dovetails with broader conservative preparations for a new White House. Highly unusual indeed. See? Even they know that this is weird. They're like, wait a second. You guys aren't supposed to be doing anything that actually matters. You guys aren't actually supposed to be operating like a competent political organization. This is highly unusual and chilling. Tom Jones and his American Accountability Foundation are digging into the background, social media posts, and commentary of key high-ranking government employees, starting with the Department of Homeland Security. They're relying in part on tips from his network of conservative contacts, including workers. In a move that alarms some, they're preparing to publish the findings online. They've got all these little weasel phrases. In a move that alarms some. Okay. With a $100,000 grant from the Heritage Foundation, the goal is to post 100 names of government workers to a website this summer to show a potential new administration who might be standing in the way of a second-term Trump agenda and ripe for scrutiny, reclassifications, reassignments, or firings. To this, I say based. We need to understand who these people are and what they do, said Jones, a former Capitol Hill aide to Republican senators. The concept of compiling and publicizing a list of government employees shows the lengths Trump's allies are willing to go to ensure nothing or no one will block his plans in a potential second term. Indeed, if the people give him a mandate, he's going to pursue that mandate, no matter who wants to stand in his way. This is the idea, at least. Jones' Project Sovereignty 2025 comes as Heritage's Project 2025 lays the groundwork with policies, proposals, and personnel ready for a possible new White House. The effort, focused on top career government officials who aren't appointees within the political structure, has stunned democracy experts. What the fuck is a democracy expert? These people are children, and shocked the civil service community in what they compare with the Red Scare of McCarthyism. No. Don't look at us. You're not supposed to look at us. We set up this whole system specifically so you would not look at us. Please stop looking at us. Allow us to subvert in secret, please. No, thank you. Jacqueline Simon, policy director at the American Federation of Government Employees, said the language being used, the Heritage Foundation's announcement praised the group for ferreting out, quote, anti-American bad actors, is, quote, shocking. Civil servants are often ex-military personnel. There's their attempt to tug at the hearts of the red-blooded American. There are ex-military personnel, and they're required to take an oath of the Constitution to work for the federal government, not a loyalty test to a president, she and others said. It just seems as though their goal is to try to menace federal employees and sow fear, said Simon, whose union backs President Joe Biden, a Democrat, for election. Josh Ham says, American Accountability Foundation, great name. Who's against accountability? And then putting it online to open source it? Beautiful. Let our schizos work. I can't help but wonder about the, you've got this operation here that's going through the social media history of these different guys, and it makes me think of the likes being hidden on Twitter, which I generally think is a good thing. I think allowing people to... I think this sort of operation is far more fleshed out and far more advanced among the Media Matters, Act Blue, Democrat Party activist core. This is the techniques that they've been using for years now. So if it means hobbling our guys a little bit to massively hobble them, I'm cool with it. But I do find the timing interesting. And as I've come to understand from some behind-the-scenes stuff, there is an active battle still happening at Twitter. Twitter is very much divided amongst its employees and executives between the old regime and the new regime. It's kind of funny. What's happening in Twitter is really a microcosm of, I think we're getting a foreshadowing of what's coming within the next presidential administration, where you have one segment of people who is focused on the good things that are happening within it. They're like, yeah, there's the bad stuff, but look how much better it is, and look how much transparency and more conversation that's allowed to be had, and different stories are being brought up to the surface that wouldn't have been brought up otherwise. Different people are able to have a voice who wouldn't have otherwise. Well, that's a sword that cuts both ways. There's some people who've received a voice on Twitter who I think it would be better if they were not there. I'm tired of seeing them. I'm tired of their petty little squabbles. I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of having to wade through all this horse shit just to get to anything that's actually meaningful. And on the flip side, you've got the people who are just complaining about it. Oh, look at all these bad things that have come because of it. Oh, now we have to verify our identity if we want to monetize on the platform. You know, you could draw out a downside from anything if you're really determined to. I think we're seeing a microcosm of what's to come with the federal government. Josh Ham says, it's too bad that the military has lost credibility with the red states. The old tried and true tactics don't hold the water they used to. Right. And it should be a white pill that our enemies don't recognize that those tactics don't work like they used to. They're still using them. It's like watching an army that's using outdated military technology. If this army that's coming to attack you is using outdated military technology and your technology is more advanced, well, that's a white pill. Even if they have much larger numbers. It says a lot about their spiritual state. Now check out how they use the parenthetical or the between the commas statement here for Trump. As Trump, comma, who has been convicted of felony charges in a hush money case and is under a 4-count federal indictment accusing him of working to overturn his 2020 election loss, faces a likely rematch with Biden this fall. Far-right conservatives have vowed to take a wrecking ball to what they call the deep state bureaucracy. My, how times have changed. The Trump campaign has said outside groups don't speak for the ex-president, who alone sets his policy priorities, which is the right thing to say. Conservatives view the federal workforce as overstepping its role to become a power center that can drive or thwart a president's agenda. They're putting this out. This is like free marketing. This is fantastic because that sentiment is shared by far more than just conservatives. Particularly during the Trump administration, government officials came under attack from the White House and Republicans on Capitol Hill, as his own cabinet often raised objections to some of his more singular or even unlawful proposals. While Jones' group won't necessarily be recommending whether to fire or reassign the federal workers it lists, the work aligns with Heritage's far-reaching Project 2025 blueprint for a conservative administration. I don't know, man. They're making this sound pretty good, and I'm grading on a curve here for assuming the mindset of the typical person who might read this. And I would say of the people who are actually seriously reading AP News and actually like allowing it to form their perspectives of the world, this framing, I would say it's probably at least 50-50 of the people who are going to be like, that's interesting. They might be onto something here, versus the people who are going to, shit their pants and scream. Heritage's Project 2025 proposes reviving the Trump Schedule F policy that would try to reclassify tens of thousands of federal workers as political appointees, which could enable mass dismissals. Although a Biden administration rule seeks to make that more difficult, the Heritage Project is working to recruit and train a new generation to travel to Washington to fill government jobs. And announcing the $100,000 Innovation Award last month, Heritage said it'd support American Accountability Foundation's, quote, investigative researchers, in-depth reports, and educational efforts to alert Congress, a conservative administration, and the American people to the presence of anti-American bad actors burrowed into the administrative state, and ensure appropriate action is taken. Heritage President Kevin Roberts said the weaponization of the federal government has been possible only because of the, quote, deep state of entrenched leftist bureaucrats. He said he was proud to support the work of American Accountability Foundation workers in, quote, in their fight to hold our government accountable and drain it of bad actors. The federal government employs about 2.2 million people, including those in the Washington, D.C. area, and workers who the unions say many Americans know as friends or neighbors in communities across the country. About 4,000 positions in the government are considered political appointees who routinely change from one presidential administration to the next, but most are career professionals. They're getting right to the heart of it. From landscapers at Veterans Administration cemeteries to economists at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Oh yeah, it's the landscapers and the economists. That's who it is. That's who makes up the career professionals. The public list making conjures for some the era of Joseph McCarthy. Conjures for some the senator who conducted grueling hearings into suspected communist sympathizers during the Cold War. The hearings were orchestrated by a top staffer, Roy Cohn, who became a confidant of a younger Trump. That's a connection that I don't hear talked about enough. Roy Cohn was one of Trump's mentors. Sky Perriman, CEO of the advocacy group Democracy Forward. Interesting, all the sources that they're drawing on to commentate on this. This must be one of those democracy experts. Sky Perriman, CEO of the advocacy group Democracy Forward, said it's deeply disturbing and reminiscent of, quote, the darker parts of American history. That sounds racist. Publicly naming government workers is, quote, an intimidation tactic to try and chill the work of these civil servants. Hell yeah, it is. And it's part of a broader retribution agenda underway this election. They cry out as they strike you, as one might say. They're seeking to undermine our democracy, she said. They're seeking to undermine the way that our government works for people. See, they're still trying to push this. All they've got are the reruns. Yeah, we've heard it. We've heard this before. This doesn't do anything for us. It's good if our democracy is undermined. If, quote, our democracy. Jones, from his desk overlooking rickhouses storing barrels in the bourbon capital of Bardstown, scoffed at comparisons to McCarthyism as nonsense. He's a former staffer to then-Senator Jim DeMint, the South Carolina conservative Republican who later led Heritage and now helms the Conservative Policy Institute, where American Accountability Foundation has a mailing address. It's interesting that he mentions South Carolina. I'm just going to say again, go listen to the conversation that Stormy had with Dimes on Blood Satellite yesterday, because he mentioned South Carolina among a number of other states, and there's a very interesting connection there. Jones also worked for Senator Ron Johnson, Republican from Wisconsin, and provided opposition research for Texas GOP Senator Ted Cruz's 2016 presidential bid. With 6 researchers, Jones' team operates remotely across the country, poring over the information about federal workers within Homeland Security, the State Department, and other agencies that deal with immigration and border issues. They're weaponizing the autism. Their focus is on the highest ranks of the civil servants, GS 13, 14, and 15 employees, and those in senior executive positions who could put up roadblocks to Trump's plan for tighter borders and more deportations. I don't care how much you think that the incoming Trump administration is going to be kneecapped by various interests. That kneecapping is not being kneecapped from like a really milquetoast or wimpy starting point. It's being kneecapped from exactly the starting point that they should have, which is the GS 13 to 15 federal employees and those in senior executive positions who could put up roadblocks to Trump's plans for tighter borders and more deportations. They're actually laying the groundwork. This is exactly what people have wanted the GOP to do for a long time. They're laying the groundwork for this sort of thing. They're also laying the groundwork for actually having a competent electoral oversight committee organization. Jones said, "I think it's important to the next administration to understand who those people are." He dismissed the risks that could be involved in publicly posting the name, salary information, and other details of federal workers who have some level of privacy, or the idea that his group's work could put employees' livelihoods in jeopardy. This is the perfect response. Quote, "You don't get to make policy and then say, hey, don't scrutinize me." He acknowledges some of the work is often a gut check or instinct about which federal employees would be suspected of trying to block a conservative agenda. Data? What data? We don't need your data. White Boy Summer, we're following our gut. We're looking at, are there wrong people on the bus right now that are, openly hostile to efforts to secure the southern border, he said. His own group came under scrutiny as it first probed Biden nominees. Biden had repealed Trump's Schedule F executive order in January of 2021, but a Government Accountability Office report in 2022 found that agencies believed it could be reinstated by a future administration. Since then, the Biden administration issued a rule that would make it harder to fire workers. A new administration could direct the Office of Personnel Management to undo the regulation, but the process would take time and be open to legal challenges. So, this implicates the judiciary and making sure that we get base judges, which is another venture that they're working on. These things obviously take a lot of time, and especially when you're dealing with a lot of subversion and opposition, you have to bake in diluted expectations. Not diluted expectations. And it also says that whoever the director of the Office of Personnel Management is very important. This is someone that, when Vivek was talking to Sean Ryan several months ago, he said 2 of the most important appointees are going to be the director of OPM and the director of the Office of Management and Budget. Basically, the CFO and the head of HR for the federal branch. Those will both be very important appointees, so I'll be keeping my eye out for that. There's also some rumors going around right now about who the most likely presidential or vice presidential candidates are. And I've seen pretty strong evidence and heard some of this private, some of it public, strong evidence that it's not going to be Vivek. And it seems that the most likely candidates that it's been narrowed down to, in my opinion, are Glenn Youngkin, the governor of Virginia, Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina, I believe, which is interesting. There's that state again. And then J.D. Vance. And I think that the Youngkin thing seems very likely. The stuff that I'm hearing it very strongly indicates that. And I think there's some good reasons for that. I've got a long post on that I'll talk about tomorrow. But I think that I've thought all along, I'm compelled by the idea of J.D. Vance, the value of him remaining in the Senate. And I suspect, knowing a little something behind the scenes about how these people are thinking, that they would value that as well. And then Tim Scott, I think, is unlikely but I haven't completely ruled it out yet. There's still some strong evidence that it may be him. I think Vivek is completely ruled out. I really don't think it's going to be Vivek. I think that Vivek is much more likely to wind up either as chief of staff. He may himself be OPM or OMB, or perhaps Treasury Secretary. That's another rumor that I've heard that is very compelling. But it really does seem like Youngkin. There's a lot of strong evidence that it'd be Youngkin. And I think there's some good reasons for that based on a thread I'll share with you guys tomorrow. So last thing we've got here is want to end on a positive note. It says goals. When you're 80 years old, what are you going to be most proud of? It won't be how rich you are, what car you drove, a high school championship, or a job title. You'll be proud of what you created in your family legacy and hopefully surrounded by the ones you love. So here, this is the goal right here. All because two people fell in love. What started with two people in love married in 1971. So this is I think this is 3 generations contained here in a little over 50 years. Maybe I missed one. Okay, there's 4. So 4 generations. This is 4 generations in 50 years. Look how many people this is. You got 36 people here in 50 years. You've already got a small tribe. Imagine another 50 years on from this. How many people would be represented? If you get 36 people in 50 years, I can't even begin to do the math. My guess is it'd probably be somewhere in the order of 600 people or something like that, depending on how many babies they keep having. This is how fast, relatively speaking, these sorts of things can turn around. But it has to start yesterday. We got to be making babies. Young men need to be marrying young women and making babies. I guarantee you, this couple that it started with, 50 years hence, are much better people than they were 50 years ago. The effect of building this entire family and providing for it and overseeing it and existing as the patriarch and matriarch for it has taken them from young, immature kids to respected patriarch and matriarch. You can't wait until you're this age to start. It has to start early. And if you start early, then this is what you can build. And this here is more important than any political party. It's more important than any particular technological trend or agenda. It has to start from this foundation. And anything that facilitates this or promotes this is a good thing and needs to be embraced. Do me a favor and like the channel, like this episode, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell. Join the Kingpill Discord, kingpill.com. And man, we've been going for 2.5 hours, and I thought might not have enough content for today. This one flew by. I appreciate you guys. Oh, real quick, Josh Ham says, dripping this info out is good, in my opinion. Slowly start putting it out there. That way it's not surprising to anyone. The normies will become used to the idea of accountability for government officials. I agree. Yeah, because one of the first thoughts I had was why, this guy obviously is taking this interview. They show up with a camera crew and they take his picture, and he's obviously cooperating with all of this. And I think that's a good thing. Start leaking it out there. Get the word out. We up. We coming.